Hello everyone, welcome to Sunburned Albino reads Danganronpa. If episode 3, hopefully the episodes won't like cut off anymore. Because we were kind of in the middle of something last time. But I'll read this passage again. Without making a sound at all, Mukuro had kicked Monokuma into the air. As soon as Monokuma's power source and his bomb circuit had perfectly aligned with the surveillance camera in the nurse's office, Mukuro plunged the iron bar into all three of them. No normal human has the skill to utilize such a technique. Not even an ultimate. All the hesitation within Mukuro had vanished. Her eyes sparkled like a panther stalking its prey at night. A tense aura surrounded Mukuro, even more so than when she fought Sakura earlier. Ignoring Monokuma's lifeless form, she looked at Makoto as he breathed softly and remembered her sister's parting words. "So this is despair," she mumbled to herself. "I'm so sorry, Junko. I never really understood what despair was." She spoke without emotion, like a machine. "But it's going to be alright now. I finally understand." Hidden within her, passions began to stir. "So, I'll make sure I make you happy, Junko. I'll make sure I fill you with despair. I'll save Makoto. I'll make sure the others don't die. I'll let them escape from this place. I'll deal with the people on the outside, too. You invested so much time and killed so many people for the sake of this plan, and I'll destroy every last remnant of it. For you." This was not an act of vengeance toward the sister who had abandoned her. This was an act of mercy. Stuck between the ultimate despair and the hope she gained from Makoto, Mukuro was being refined into something that was unlike despair or hope, and she had no way of knowing where her path would lead. Over 10 minutes had passed. The sound of the students leaving the gym and making their way to the nurse's office rang throughout the hall. Genocide Jack had continued to dodge Sakura's attacks with her tricky movements, but when Byakuya blurted out, "Enough already, you irritating pervert!" Genocide Jack stopped in her tracks. "Oh my! Getting chewed out by my bespectacled Byakuya is making my masochistic side get all tingly! They say the line between sadism and masochism is paper thin, but in my case it's more like a Venn diagram. Words can't explain these hot waves of passion squirming from the top of my head to the tips of my toes!" As she rambled incoherently about Byakuya, the other students tied her up with a microphone cable from the gym and locked her in her room. Half the students stayed behind to keep an eye on her, while the rest left to search the grounds of the school. As soon as the door to the nurse's office opened, Kyoko saw a non-functioning Monokuma with a hole in its chest and the remains of a surveillance camera. It wasn't just in the nurse's office, though. On their way there, the students had seen several destroyed surveillance cameras and scattered Monokuma bodies. This was a clear violation of school regulations, but if Mukuro was allied with Monokuma, those regulations wouldn't apply to her anyway. The Monokuma inside the gym was no longer moving, and the students had lost contact with the hacker, Bashiki Madurai. So the students assumed that Madurai had taken control of a different Monokuma and went after Mukuro on his own. With that in mind, Kyoko turned and looked inside the nurse's office once again. It was unusually quiet. The beds were empty, but Kyoko could see from the bloodstains that someone had been resting there recently. "Tch, looks like they're already gone," Mondo remarked. "Okay, Mondo." But as he was about to leave, Kyoko spoke up behind him. "I'm going to stay here with Chihiro and search for clues." "Huh?" asked Chihiro, her timid eyes widening. "Clues?" Kyoko continued to speak in a calm tone of voice. "Yes, there may be some clues in these Monokuma remains. I figured you would be the best candidate for investigating machinery." Sakura spoke up. "But isn't that dangerous?" Since Sakura could clearly hold her own in a fight with Mukuro, she had joined the other students in searching the school grounds. Kyoko shook her head and replied, "I'm sorry to say this, but if things get out of hand, Chihiro and I will just be in your way. I think it's better if we search for clues here instead of doing nothing. Besides, we might be able to use Monokuma's parts to detect any radio broadcasts from the outside world." You certainly have a point. Understood. We'll be exploring this floor for a while. Please shout for us if anything happens." Sakura left the nurse's office. How did she destroy Monokuma like this? As Chihiro cautiously stood over Monokuma's remains, Kyoko started searching through the room. She zeroed in on one of the beds and began studying it intensely. A moment later, Kyoko was satisfied with what she found, and let out a small sigh before she spoke. "Chihiro, let me apologize to you in advance." "Huh?" "I dragged you into this gamble of mine, so if anything happens, run out into the hallway and call for help." What does that mean? But instead of answering Chihiro's question, Kyoko started talking to one of the empty beds. Let me say this first. I'm prepared to hear your story. No matter how ridiculous it may sound, I promise not to decide if it's a lie or the truth until after I've listened to it in its entirety. Chihiro looked confused. She didn't understand what Kyoko meant at all. The ultimate ... lowered her eyes and turned to the ultimate programmer to make a request. Chihiro, does your laptop have a voice recording function, and do you also have a microphone? Huh? Yeah? I want you to use that to record everything we're about to hear. But there's no one here. As Chihiro wondered to herself, she began connecting Monokuma's parts to her laptop and turned on the record function. I'm sure we'll pick up every sound in this room now, said Chihiro nervously. Satisfied, Kyoko nodded and once again started talking to the empty bed. So, what were you going to do if I'd told everyone that I'd found Makoto? When she heard Kyoko say that, Chihiro looked back at her and was surprised by what she saw. At that moment, the ultimate programmer was kneeling on the floor next to Monokuma's remains. From that position, she was able to see it. Of all the beds in the nurse's office, there was one bed in particular that couldn't be seen from the entrance. Underneath that bed lay a limp Makoto. A blood pack was hidden next to the bed and slowly providing Makoto with a transfusion. The contents of the blood pack were clear. Rather than blood, it seemed to be some kind of saline solution used in emergency hydration. Though it wouldn't be as effective as an actual blood transfusion, it was enough to keep him from going into shock. Though that was the extent of Chihiro's medical knowledge. She was already surprised that Makoto had been in the nurse's office this whole time. Not only that, but Kyoko wasn't talking to the bed that Makoto was under, which sent chills throughout Chihiro's body. However, there was nobody under the bed that Kyoko was facing. But the moment Chihiro noticed that, a voice rang out from underneath it. As soon as everyone's attention was focused on Makoto, I was planning to take advantage of that opportunity to take someone hostage. As Chihiro cautiously lowered her head until it was nearly touching the floor, she was able to make out who was talking. Surprisingly, the person hiding there was clinging to the frame of the bed, like a ninja clinging to the ceiling. Presumably, if someone had glanced under the bed quickly, they wouldn't have noticed anybody was there. Though Chihiro had no idea how the person was able to hide under the bed for so long, she could at least understand that their strength was beyond normal human levels. There was no question that the person hiding under the bed was Mukuro Ikusaba. But you pretended not to notice. Why? Mukuro's voice was as cold as ice, but Kyoko didn't even flinch as she responded. Because I wanted to hear your side of the story. I knew you were hiding under that bed. Compared to the others, the frame was slightly more pronounced. Chihiro tried comparing the beds to see if this was true, but she couldn't tell the difference at all. Only Kyoko's natural observation skills could let her see something like that. Mukuro seemed to come to a similar conclusion and appeared from under the bed without making a sound. Her face was stoic and cold. Compared to the bomb inside Monokuma, Chihiro thought she was even more terrifying. However, Mukuro ignored Chihiro and shifted her gaze at Kyoko. She leaned against a wall and let her arms fall to her sides as she threw out another question. Why do you want to hear what I have to say? Kyoko thought about this simple question for a while, as if she were searching within her own heart for the answer. If I have to provide an answer, it's because I wish to remain neutral. Kyoko quietly looked down. I'm currently missing most of my memories. I don't know who I am or what talent I had to be accepted into this school. She could hear Chihiro gasp behind her, but Kyoko didn't mind and continued. But even so, I believe I should listen to what you have to say. Regardless of whether you're good or evil, I must hear all the facts in order to know the truth. Good and evil don't matter. I'll come to a conclusion based on what I see and hear. I think that's the methodology that's been instilled into me. I see. I completely forgot you were like that, Kyoko. But before I listen to what you have to say, I'd like to ask you one question first. What is it? Mukuro's reply was completely emotionless. Kyoko presented her question as if she were asking it of herself as well. What was my talent that allowed me to attend this academy? The answer to that question was simple. Kyoko, you're the ultimate detective. That answer marked a turning point for both girls. Thank you. I have a better understanding of the situation now. Kyoko slowly raised her head and presented a theory. If my memory loss wasn't just a coincidence, then your group has the ability to erase people's memories. With that in mind, if we take into consideration the situation that unfolded in the gym earlier, I can only come to one possibility. Possibility? Yes. What you said to Byakuya when he thought you were taking Toko hostage. You claimed that they met 2 years ago. It's possible that might actually be true. The fact that Makoto called out Mukuro's name, the things that Mukuro confirmed and denied, Genocide Jack's outlandish claims, these key factors that Kyoko noted using her special observation skills were converging in her mind to form one answer. It's possible that Byakuya and Toko's memories were also erased, like mine, but I don't think their circumstances are quite the same as mine. But if our memories can be controlled so freely, it calls into question whether the day Monokuma appeared was really the same day we entered the academy. Like you said, it's possible that we've known Toko Fukawa for the last 2 years. What do you mean? Chihiro cried, still working on connecting her laptop to Monokuma's parts. Kyoko continued, speaking to both Chihiro and Mukuro. We thought we were knocked unconscious with sleeping gas the moment we arrived at this school, but it's possible that we were simply made to think that's what happened. For example, we may have already spent the last 2 years at Hope's Peak Academy, and our memories of that time were completely erased. It's even possible that we aren't even ultimates at all, just random people who've been implanted with 16 years worth of false memories. Though Kyoko's claim sounded ridiculous, her face was completely serious. She looked up at Mukuro once again. Which means, I'm considering the possibility that your crazy story is actually the truth. Kyoko's declaration filled the room with silence. But she didn't let that silence overwhelm her. Kyoko cut through it with her own words. Without evidence, all I can do is make hypotheses. That's why I want to hear what you have to say, Mukuro. I have no intention of blindly believing what you're going to say, or what that self-proclaimed hacker who took over Monokuma said. She paused and lowered her eyes again, then declared with powerful determination. Even so, I intend to come to a conclusion as fairly and objectively as I can. But I can only do that if you trust me and tell me the truth. Kyoko's conviction was clear from her voice. Mukuro's eyes narrowed slightly, and a tapestry of emotions flashed across her face as she looked toward Kyoko. But when she opened her mouth, her expression and voice were completely devoid of emotion. That's right. I completely forgot you were like that. Mukuro repeated this to herself softly, then faced Kyoko and declared, That must be why Junko took care to erase more of your memories compared to the others. Very well, I'll tell you everything. And after Mukuro placed Makoto back onto the bed, she began to mechanically tell a story. The story of a girl who wanted to fill the world with despair, a girl who only felt truly happy when she was filled with despair herself, a plan for despair that began 2 years ago, or perhaps even earlier than that, how the world was currently ruled by despair itself. Mukuro provided a brief summary of everything she knew about the plan. That's why it sounded even more outrageous than Kyoko had expected. And through her story, Kyoko was able to learn the truth about herself, who she is, and why she came to the academy. The fate of the academy's real headmaster, Kyoko's father. As she listened to Mukuro's story, Kyoko remained silent the whole time. Her face went blank when she learned her father had died. Perhaps her memory loss and the absurdity of the situation helped lessen the impact somewhat. But there was no guarantee Kyoko would even believe her story. After Mukuro finished speaking, Kyoko stayed silent. With her unrivaled mental prowess, she was able to listen to Mukuro's story without interrupting her or dismissing it as nonsense. Mukuro continued. You don't have to believe me. After all, any pictures that could prove my story are with Junko. All I can do is talk. After she said that, Mukuro silently walked toward the entrance to the nurse's office. When she arrived at the door, she spoke again without looking back. But even if you don't believe me, you still listened to everything I had to say, so... Kyoko, Chihiro, thank you. After apologizing in such a strange tone of voice, she turned to the bed where Makoto lay, breathing weakly. Make sure Makoto stays rested. When he wakes up, make sure you give him some sports drinks from the dining hall or supply room to drink. Please. Of course, but... What are you going to do now? Asked Kyoko. Mukuro straightened herself up. Despair. I need to make Junko feel despair. Mukuro continued mumbling to herself as she opened the door. There's nothing else I can do. No, there is something you can do. Mukuro stopped walking as Kyoko spoke firmly. Regardless of whether Monokuma is really Junko Enoshima or Beshiki Madurai, if you're dealing with him, he won't be able to lay a finger on Makoto. I don't fully trust you, but if you're really concerned for Makoto's life, I'm willing to work with you. Unlike Beshiki, who's probably abandoned him already. Right? I'm sorry. I don't really work well with others. Mukuro looked away, then bowed her head as she left the nurse's office. But, I'll do my best. The doors closed, and Mukuro was gone. I'm sorry for involving you in something so dangerous, Chihiro. As she continued to organize the vast amount of information that Mukuro gave her, Kyoko turned to Chihiro, who was still working on Monokuma. As she trembled with fear, Chihiro slowly looked back at Kyoko. Kyoko? About what Mukuro said just now? Chihiro's face turned pale as she struggled with her words, and Kyoko tried to calm her down. We can't determine if anything she told us was true or not. Oh, that's her. There's no need to be afraid. But Chihiro shook her head and returned to looking at her laptop. I think she's telling the truth. What are you basing that on? Well, it looks like Monokuma is really being controlled from the outside. Part of Monokuma's system had been connected to Chihiro's laptop, and she was analyzing the data within its control system. And it was then that the Ultimate Programmer noticed something unusual about it. This control program... I thought it would be another year before the system became fully operational. Chihiro started trembling so much that she was unable to continue speaking. We can't confirm that, said Kyoko, proposing another possibility to avoid jumping to conclusions. It's possible that a similar program was being developed in secret, but Chihiro adamantly shook her head and said, No, that's not it. It just looks really familiar to me. Kyoko looked over Chihiro's trembling shoulders to peer at the screen, and that's when she noticed. This program... Chihiro, did you create this? All the Ultimate Programmer could do was nod weakly. First floor, main hall. Mukuro continued moving forward, and was fortunate enough to not encounter Sakura or Mondo. With no interference from anyone, she made her way to a hall as large as the gym, and stood before the sealed main entrance. Suddenly, Monokuma popped out from the shadows to block her path. Within this hall that resembled a nuclear bomb shelter, replete with all manner of heavy weaponry, Monokuma's silhouette was conspicuously out of place here. His laughter rang throughout the room as he wiggled his body from side to side.
Boo-hoo-hoo-hoo! What were you doing at the nurse's office? Did you eliminate your rival for Makoto's affections? Or did you help play matchmaker instead? Either way, don't you think it's kind of adorable to put Makoto and Kyoko in this kind of situation together? If this were a suspense film, those two would be the last couple standing. But if this was a horror film, they'd just die anyway. The killer was alive all along. Splat goes the blood, plop goes the meat. I'm a huge fan of endings where the characters think they're gonna live, but they're really headed to the final destination. Wait, what the hell is a tenation? What does that even mean?
Despite Monokuma's angry complaints, Mukuro remained unperturbed. She continued to stare icy daggers at Monokuma, as if she was waiting for him to finish speaking.
Well, anyway, I'm just so sad right now. A regulation-breaking delinquent is disrupting the harmony of this peaceful academy. I can't even keep one of my students from running wild. Time to say goodbye to your incompetent headmaster. I'm gonna use Monokuma Evolution to become a big Magnum headmaster and mold you into a decent student!
As soon as he said that, Monokuma extended his claws and waddled toward Mukuro.
So if I'm gonna mold you, then I gotta kill you first!
Right as he finished speaking, Monokuma suddenly charged at Mukuro like a spiked volleyball, but Mukuro was faster and dodged Monokuma's attack. She jumped back, keeping her distance from Monokuma just in case his claws could extend even longer. Just then, a shadowy figure appeared next to her. Mukuro twisted her body to its limits and just narrowly evaded the figure's attack. When she landed on the floor, she immediately saw...
So, what does the immortal killer want anyway? Are you gonna tell the others the truth and escape with them? Even though you know what the outside world is like right now?
Two Monokumas were speaking to Mukuro in unison.
Honestly, I don't mind if you do that. I can just imagine the look on everyone's face when they discover the truth. It fills me with such heart-throbbing excitement.
The two Monokumas continued to speak in stereo sound.
You said you'd destroy my plans, but there's no happy ending waiting for you no matter which route you take. And you only have yourself to blame for that. Don't tell me you thought they'd be grateful to you. Even if you guys escape here, do you think they'll still forgive you when they get a whiff of that nasty air outside? Some of them might prefer to stay in the school, and some of them might resent you for being kind and showing them the truth. But then again, this is all your fault anyway, so it doesn't really matter what they think of you. Monokuma made a little mistake.
Despite facing down 2 Monokumas, Mukuro's expression didn't waver. She understood that controlling 2 Monokumas simultaneously was a piece of cake for Junko. Mukuro drew an arm-length metal bar from seemingly nowhere and readied herself. It was the remains of the IV stand from the nurse's office, sharpened into a pointed weapon. With her weapon in hand, Mukuro responded in a cold, mechanical tone. "That's fine. I'm already used to that." None of the fear she felt when Monokuma suggested that Makoto would blame her appeared on her face. Her path was clear to her now, and she calmly issued her demand to Monokuma. "Junko, open the gates." The shock of such a straightforward demand left both Monokumas momentarily speechless, but soon they replied,
"Huh? Why?"
"So we can all leave together." Another straightforward answer. Both Monokumas faced each other and began gesturing as if they were whispering to one another. Mukuro knew their movements were intended to mock her. Unmoved, she continued to speak to Junko directly. "I think they'll understand if I show them the outside world, and then they'll stop doubting Makoto."
You always find new ways to disappoint me, Mukuro. Did you forget why the school has an air filtration system? It's true that the air outside...
It's true that the air outside is polluted, but I don't think it'll kill us immediately. Besides, it's better than being trapped in the school and forced to kill each other.
How can you be sure the others will go along with you? You know what I mean, right? Before the former headmaster got turned into space dust, he interviewed the others and they all agreed that they wanted to stay in the school. That was before their memories had even been erased. Do you really want to betray their wishes?
Mukuro blinked and slowly stepped forward. I don't really care about their feelings.
Huh?
You're all I need, Junko. So don't worry, I'm always watching out for you. I'm going to make sure you feel despair, and I'm going to make Makoto and the others happy. If you want to revel in your own despair that badly, then I'll trust the hope Makoto gave me and take my chances with them instead of you. Mukuro's brief but powerful words caused the Monokumas to turn and talk to each other again.
Oh my, this doesn't look good at all, Monokuma A. This child doesn't realize her own hypocrisy. She's so disappointing that she's starting to reach critical mass, right, Monokuma B?
The 2 Monokumas looked at Mukuro, who seemed ready to destroy them, and said,
What do you think, Monokuma C?
Huh? Mukuro was taken aback by their question, but her instincts suddenly kicked in and she immediately dodged away. At that moment, a 3rd Monokuma, claws extended, passed by where her head had been previously. This new Monokuma unit landed with several spins and faced Mukuro, who had clung to the remains of a surveillance camera still attached to the ceiling.
I agree with you both, A and B.
The 3 Monokumas lined themselves up. To the students locked inside the academy, this sight would have been akin to a nightmare.
Right on!
The 3 units began speaking in perfect harmony as their 6 eyes looked up at Mukuro. Suddenly, they each jumped away in 3 separate directions and kicked off one of the walls. The path of each unit's triangular attack all converged on a single point, Mukuro, who was still clinging to the ceiling. She was surrounded by razor-sharp claws coming at her from different directions. But this situation wasn't even a nightmare to Mukuro. Compared to the time she fended off 3 assassins who had invaded her camp one night back when she was still a member of Fenrir, this was nothing. This thought crossed Mukuro's mind as she dangled from the ceiling with one hand and thrashed her limbs around like a tornado. Intercepted by this move, the Monokumas fell to the floor with a loud crash. Mukuro landed on the ground and chased after one of them, brandishing her metal bar. Suddenly, she stopped moving and took a huge leap back. One of the Monokumas exploded with a deafening roar. He had detonated the bomb inside of himself in an attempt to take Mukuro down with him. But thanks to her honed battlefield instincts, Mukuro managed to avoid the explosion. She looked toward the hallway, expecting the explosion to have attracted the attention of Sakura and others, but she didn't hear any footsteps approaching. Monokuma's voice rang from within the dense smoke.
Oh, you don't have to worry. I already told the other students to assemble in the cafeteria. They were eager to follow my orders after I told them I'd disarmed the poison gas and that a special police unit was coming to get them. I'm pretty sure Kyoko and others are all in the cafeteria by now. I'm sure Makoto is with them too. I doubt Sakura will get too rough with him, but I'm sure Byakuya will torture Makoto once he wakes up. I can just imagine him rubbing salt or pouring soy sauce into his open wounds. Man, I'm getting all hot and bothered right now.
As she listened to Monokuma's overlapping voices, Mukuro tilted her head slightly and asked, I'm pretty sure they're going to find out that you lied about that special police unit. Are you really okay with that?
No worries. Once I dealt with you, I don't care at all if they found out I was lying. You still don't get it? You're such a disappointment!
It suddenly dawned on Mukuro. Not the reason why Monokuma didn't care if the students found out he lied, but rather that the voices of the Monokumas in the smoke were gradually increasing in number. As the smoke started to clear, the shadows of 3 Monokumas appeared. The one that exploded couldn't have revived, so a new one must have come to take its place. But there's no way Mukuro only heard 3 Monokumas talking just now. As if to prove her hearing had been accurate, the Monokumas suddenly made their move. The 3 Monokumas bent over and began twirling their upper bodies. From behind them, new Monokumas emerged, like after-images brought to life. This second row of Monokumas mimicked the earlier ones with only 1 frame of delay, revealing even more Monokumas behind them. Eventually, Mukuro realized that there were 3 rows containing 10 Monokumas each.
Did you know this is called a circle dance?
Monokuma's 30 voices spoke in perfect harmony as they divulged information that had nothing to do with the current situation. Mukuro already knew that multiple Monokumas were positioned throughout the academy, but only Junko knew how many Monokumas actually existed. Mukuro had no way of knowing if these 30 Monokumas were part of a larger contingent. The flock of two-tone teddy bears continued to twirl around. Mukuro felt like she was being bombarded with hypnotic images, but faced with this abnormal sight, the ultimate soldier remained calm and maintained her focus. She was nothing like the girl who had panicked earlier in the gym when Makoto was impaled. As she stood before 30 emissaries of despair, she slowed her breathing and allowed her heart rate to accelerate. It was instinct, not fear or panic, that sent her blood racing throughout her body, speeding up the reaction time of her cells. As her senses sharpened, the Monokumas began speaking to her again.
Don't worry, I'll make sure Makoto doesn't die. As long as everyone lives, I can reset their memories as many times as I want. That's right. All your effort, hope, dreams, and determination are going right in the garbage heap.
The Monokumas took turns speaking in groups of 10, as if the mastermind controlling the Monokumas wanted to show off her ability to manipulate them. However, the ultimate soldier knew what the true purpose behind all this was. She strained her ears to their limit and noticed a certain sound hidden among the Monokuma's voices. Mukuro's face remained perfectly still as she kicked off the floor. The moment she moved to the side, a roaring sound shook the entrance hall. The ceiling-mounted turrets in front of the gate started raining bullets down on Mukuro. The Monokumas were just the mastermind's decoy while she tried to blow her away. As if further trapping her, the Monokumas charged at Mukuro through the storm of bullets. Mukuro guessed that the mastermind programmed their movements in advance so they wouldn't get hit by a single bullet. She ran for the gates, evading waves of bullets and claws every step of the way, programming 30 Monokumas in 2 turrets while also predicting Mukuro's escape route. This would be considered impossible for anyone, but Mukuro knew it was possible for Junko. As Ultimate Despair, she possessed despair-inducing abilities that surpassed the capabilities of any normal human. Her display of power was only for filling Mukuro with despair. Despair. The scene playing out in front of Mukuro was brimming with despair. The adorably deadly Monokumas laughed and danced like reapers as bullets whizzed through the air. It was despair to the point of absurdity, and it was all for Mukuro. But in the presence of such despair, Mukuro felt a strange serenity. For me? Junko's doing all this for me? Junko, are you watching me right now? In the end, perhaps Mukuro really was a disappointment. She clenched her fists. Junko, thank you. The sound of gunfire overshadowed her whisper, and Mukuro fell completely silent. As a member of Ultimate Despair, Mukuro's heart was filled with joy. Though she was filled with emotion, her eyes had lost their sparkle. Silence filled the air. Even the gunfire from the turret seemed to stop for a moment. But that was only an illusion to the one controlling Monokuma. Something strong enough to silence the gunfire and avoid being picked up by the sensors spread through the school, with Mukuro at the center. I'll make sure I do this right. With that final thought, she closed her mouth and turned off her emotions. As she ran through the waves of scorching bullets, the air around her began to grow colder. As this coolness spread into her heart, it began to beat in a mechanical fashion. Several seconds later, Mukuro's body and mind melded together and became one with her surroundings. Her temperature now dominated the battlefield. Despair, bullets, and Monokumas filled the area. Mukuro predicted their movements and jumped into the air without any hesitation. One of the Monokumas jumped at her, but she avoided his attack, kicked his body, and launched herself in midair. Bullets pierced through the space Mukuro was previously occupying, striking the falling Monokuma right through its internal bomb. The impact of the bullet caused it to explode, sending fiery Monokuma parts everywhere. As she rode the blast wave, Mukuro balanced herself in midair as she kicked away the 2-3 Monokumas that leapt after her. She moved so gracefully she was practically flying. In contrast, the Monokumas threw themselves into the path of oncoming bullets, exploding one after the other. Some of them exploded near the main entrance, but their blasts didn't even leave a scratch. With full control over the entrance hall, Mukuro evaded bullets and confirmed that the bombs inside Monokuma weren't enough to destroy the door, but she refused to stop. Mukuro needed to get information on what she must do to escape the academy. She had no desire to kill Junko. Mukuro wanted to fill Junko with despair by instilling hope into the future of Makoto and the other students. That was Mukuro's ultimate goal. Get information. In contrast to her determination, her mouth stayed shut. But this did not mean Mukuro was not currently speaking to Junko. This situation, this battle of death and destruction, was a conversation of sorts for Mukuro. All she knew how to do was fight. She thought she wasn't interested in anything else. She thought she didn't need anything else. All Mukuro needed was to be a sword to fulfill her sister's desire for despair. That purpose alone was the crux of her existence, and she lived her entire life convincing herself that she couldn't do anything else. That's why power was like a language to Mukuro. A battle to the death revealed more about her heart than mere words ever could. Her words were in the wind of savagery that blows across the battlefield, uprooting others who also speak the language of violence. This was true even against her sister. When Junko would berate her sister, Mukuro couldn't talk back. All she could do was cower and apologize profusely. But it's different now. For the first time, Junko was using a language her sister actually recognized. The child of despair who tore the world apart was speaking to her sister with the language of power. Mukuro's heart filled with joy. For that reason, she strengthened her focus on her conversation with Junko, and that emotion began to gradually disappear. On this frigid battlefield, Mukuro continued her heated conversation. Endless rounds of despair fired from the school's turrets, but Mukuro's words intercepted every last violent shot that threatened to shatter her body and mind in half. She quickly realized that the Monokumas hadn't decreased in number at all, no matter how many she kept destroying. Not only that, she noticed that more Monokumas had been joining the fray, and so there were nearly 50 of them for Mukuro to fight. But Mukuro's resolve wouldn't break so easily. As she continued to wield her power, her heart began to fill with something that was neither hope nor despair. She learned despair from being abandoned by Junko, and she learned hope from her acts of violence. For Mukuro, who had no interest in this world, this small space in front of the gate was a reflection of her life, a representation of her perfect world. This disappointing girl, filled with endless disappointment, who knew of no other way to live, continued her lonely dance. She surrendered herself to the rhythm of despair, which accompanies the music of hope. Computer room's innermost area, Monokuma room. How much time had passed? The surveillance cameras at the gates were capturing footage of countless Monokumas falling at the hands of a child who fought like a raging demon. The Monokumas bolstered their numbers, and now 100 of them were trying to sink their claws into Mukuro. Most of them were running on autopilot, reacting to her movements based on prior information they had received in advance. But despite standing before hundreds of mechanical adversaries, Mukuro's face showed no fear. She hadn't sustained a single injury, giving her a presence that was nearly divine to behold. Though Sakura Ogami was powerful enough to injure her arm, Mukuro in her current state could potentially fight Sakura to a draw now without relying on firearms. She took complete control of the battlefield, taking in her surroundings as if they were a part of herself. She dodged attacks from the rear as though she had eyes on the back of her head, and stabbed through Monokuma's weak points with her metal bar. No matter where the attacks came from, Mukuro deflected them all as if her skin were covered in eyes. Describing her as ultimate no longer did her justice. Mukuro had transcended the boundaries of humanity and become a pure killing machine. But despite that, even though she understood the ludicrous power her sister possessed, Junko was not afraid. She felt not one iota of fear. After all, All Junko can feel is despair. She even started to admire her sister's attempt to fill her with despair, but that sentiment quickly filled Junko with an orgiastic ecstasy of despair. Junko knew. She knew that Mukuro was neither hope nor despair. She was just a phenomenon. A disappointing girl who no longer understood herself, who only knew how to be violent because it was all she could believe in anymore. Mukuro had become an avatar of destruction beyond that of any military force. She couldn't even be considered a soldier anymore. She was a natural disaster, like a typhoon or a tornado. Or perhaps, like gravity, she was now a fundamental force of the universe that only existed to bring despair to Junko. The mastermind enjoyed watching her sister go all out. If Mukuro destroyed everything and ruined her life, Junko would still be comforted by the despair. She could just go right ahead and overpower her. Junko considered this for a few seconds until a familiar, hopeless habit reared its head. Her habit of getting so bored that it made her sick. The girl who had been grinning as she watched the screen now bore a look of calm stoicism, and she reached for the microphone connected to Monokuma's speakers. Mukuro was no longer human anymore, but Junko knew how to bring her back. It was a simple feeling, really, and with that hopeless feeling for Mukuro in mind, the mastermind said just one word.
Mukuro.
In front of the main entrance.
Mukuro.
That voice, it was calling her name. Instead of using Monokuma's voice filter, Junko's natural voice was coming out of Monokuma's unit. That's all it took. With one word, Mukuro Ikusaba stopped being a force of nature and became a person again. Monokuma would not miss this opportunity. As if moving to the beat of Mukuro's shaking heart, a torrent of claws leaped to attack her. But Mukuro trusted her instincts and twisted her entire body to fend off the attacks, leaving her with only a few scrapes here and there. But the despair wasn't over yet. The ultimate despair didn't waste any time making her next move.
Mukuro, watch out!
Huh? As soon as Mukuro heard that voice, her mind went completely blank. There was no mistaking it. That was Makoto's scream. The scream that saved her from the spears of Gungnir and changed her destiny. No, that's wrong. It took her a tenth of the second to realize that voice was just a sound clip that Junko had replayed. But it was more than enough time to drag Mukuro, who had regained her humanity, into despair. Right when she recovered from her moment of shock, Monokuma appeared behind her and roundhouse kicked her in the temple. She twisted her head to roll with the blow, but at that moment, a different Monokuma attacked her from the opposite side with a headbutt. And as soon as Mukuro dodged that attack, 3 Monokumas launched simultaneous drop kicks and knocked her to the ground. The fact that they weren't using their claws meant they weren't trying to kill Mukuro right away. Before she could stand up again, dozens of Monokumas waiting for her on the floor climbed on top of Mukuro and pinned her limbs. One of the Monokumas waddled over to Mukuro as she lay face down on the floor, and laughed.
A pretty girl getting pinned by all these me's. I wonder if I should feel more excited about this. Don't make that face. If I wanted to kill you, I'd just pump you full of bullets right now. But I don't think the audience watching this on TV would like that ending very much. I need to make sure I do it the right way this time.
What are you planning to do to me? Mukuro asked in her emotionless voice. Monokuma guffawed and answered.
Nothing. I'm just gonna stick to the original plan and make you play the killing game at this school. I'll erase everyone's memories again, and I'll just make them redo the introduction and the entrance ceremony again.
In typical Monokuma fashion, he leaned his face toward Mukuro.
But it'd be boring if we had to redo everything. Maybe this time I'll have you participate as Mukuro Ikusaba. I'll take away even more of your memories like I did to that irritating detective girl. You'll just be a poor little girl with no memory at all.
As Monokuma talked and wiggled his body from side to side, the other Monokumas danced and twirled around. Amid this fantastical scene, Monokuma continued to describe his hopeless plan in a nonchalant manner.
At first, you'll be the girl with amnesia, and everyone will feel so sorry for you. But as they unravel the mystery of this academy, they'll find out who you really are. It's exciting to think how they'll treat you when that happens. Knowing you'll probably kill someone purely on instinct. Maybe I should rethink my rules about self-defense.
You can't. Her memories would be erased. There was nothing she could do about her classmates hating her, but losing even her childhood memories would mean her connection to Junko would be severed as well. Even if Mukuro had no interest in the world, that was unbearable even for her.
I've heard of New Game Plus before, but this is the first time I'll get to see a New Game Minus. Should I tie you up for fun? Or maybe we should make this game even more masochistic. Forget hard mode, very hard mode, and inferno mode. Wanna just skip ahead to impossible mode? Maybe I'll erase your memories after I drag you on a motorcycle, pummel you with 1,000 baseballs, burn you at the stake, and crush you with an excavator!
Mukuro knew what Monokuma was talking about. He was describing the tools they had prepared for the various executions they had planned for the students.
After everyone reintroduces themselves, they'll walk around the school grounds and eventually find a flat-chested girl with amnesia, covered in bandages, with Fenrir's tattoo on her right hand. I'd bet a certain fan base might get off on that. If this were a game, that would increase sales by 500%.
Though Monokuma sounded like he was joking, everything he said was deadly serious. As evidence, Mukuro heard a rumbling sound off in the distance.
Now then, your sweet ride is on its way!
Based on the engine's noise, Mukuro surmised that it was the large motorcycle that was supposed to be used for one of the executions.
I took the time to bring this all the way from the punishment room, so you better be grateful!
The sound of the roaring engine grew louder and louder, like the approaching footsteps of death. Mukuro wondered how Monokuma would drive it with such tiny arms and legs, but then she remembered she was dealing with an ultimate despair. Junko would make the impossible possible just to bring about despair. A despair that went hand in hand with Mukuro's fate. Did I fail? I couldn't fill Junko with despair? I couldn't save Makoto and the others? Questions raced through Mukuro's mind, but she wasn't able to answer them. There's no way she could have answered them so easily. After all, she was still alive. The sound of the motorcycle grew closer and closer, as if it was threatening to break Mukuro's spirit. Suddenly, Monokuma stopped moving. The other Monokumas continued doing their automatic movements. As this strange event unfolded, Mukuro noticed something. The motorcycle had suddenly gone quiet. After a few seconds, the engine exploded to life and began to approach even faster than before. Only a few seconds later, what appeared in front of the main entrance was an enormous motorcycle that plowed through groups of Monokumas like a predator hunting its prey. The rider of this motorcycle was none other than Mondo Awada.
Huh?
Mukuro and Monokuma were both visibly shocked by this turn of events. Instead of addressing them, Mondo accelerated the motorcycle he stole from Monokuma directly toward Mukuro. Just before his front tire touched Mukuro, he popped a reverse wheelie and turned the entire motorcycle around. The back wheel swept over Mukuro's back, knocking away all the Monokumas that were pinning her. "Hey, can you stand?" Mondo asked, and begrudgingly offered his hand to Mukuro. Confused, Mukuro took his hand and stood up. "What are you doing, Mondo?"
What are you doing, Mondo? I was so close!
One of the Monokumas protested, not in his normal voice, but as the hacker, Bashiki Madurai. "Oh yeah, you're Bashiki or whatever, right?"
That's right! Why are you helping a terrorist?
I guess Bashiki has a different voice than Monokuma. Alright.
I ain't bragging about this or anything, but I have no clue if you or this girl is lying.
The veins in his temple began to bulge, and his cheeks flushed with anger as Mondo said,
But still, I ain't the type to just stand around while some idiot gangs up on a girl.
What are you saying? Get a hold of yourself! You must be experiencing Stockholm Syndrome! You've deluded yourself into thinking you're friends with the criminal who's taken you hostage!
Monokuma tried to explain to Mondo, but he ignored him, took Mukuro's hand, and pulled her onto the back of the motorcycle.
Oh, shut the fuck up! I don't know nothing about Stockholms or Syndromes, but don't go acting like you can boss me around!
As Mondo shouted, he revved the motorcycle as if he were using it to punctuate his words. The ceiling-mounted turrets began moving, but the two disappeared before the turrets could take aim at the motorcycle. As they zoomed through the hallway, countless Monokumas chased after them, waving their claws wildly through the air. "Why?" asked Mukuro.
Huh?
Shouted Mondo. His voice was even louder than the sound of the engine.
Don't get the wrong idea! I don't trust you at all!
He lowered his voice slightly, as if he were whispering to himself.
But still, I don't know why, but I felt like I could trust what he said.
"He?" inquired Mukuro. But there was no time for questions. The unit leading the Monokumas chasing after the motorcycle had almost caught up to them. And then, like the enormous maw of some fearsome creature, they brandished their claws in perfect unison. At that moment, the motorcycle zoomed by a certain girl. A girl whose fighting ability surpasses that of any normal human. The strongest girl on Earth. With a fighting spirit that defied comprehension, the ultimate martial artist kicked off the floor. A sound even louder than the motorcycle's engine filled the room. When Mukuro looked back, she saw Sakura landing on the floor, sending the pack of Monokumas flying several meters away. Sakura? If she heard Mukuro mumble her name, Sakura didn't acknowledge it. Like a statue of a fearsome god king, she calmed her breathing as she stood before the pack of Monokumas, ready for battle.
Your pursuit methods seem unbecoming for one who claims to be the ultimate hacker.
An overpowering aura seeped from her skin, and her skin shimmered as an intense heat began to fill the hallway. Unlike the power of Mukuro's sheer violence, this was the power of martial arts. Mukuro froze the air around her, and time along with it, but Sakura was generating enough heat to boil space itself as she stood before the Monokumas. With that heat stinging her back, Mukuro looked ahead. Hifumi and Chihiro were cautiously peeking from behind the door leading to the dorms, while Aoi and Taka kept watch from inside the building. After passing them by, Mondo slowed down the motorcycle as he reached the front of the cafeteria and turned into a complete stop. The other students looked warily at Mukuro. But among these students, Mukuro noticed two people who weren't regarding her with suspicion. One was Kyoko, who seemed to be studying the situation. The other one was a skinny boy who was leaning against Kyoko's shoulder. Makoto? Mukuro's lips began to tremble as she sat on the back of the motorcycle. Ignoring the pain coursing through his body, Makoto smiled at Mukuro and repeated what he said to her earlier.
I'm glad you're safe, Mukuro. Unfortunately,
Mukuro was unable to realize her hope of filling her little sister with despair. Instead, she had successfully planted the seeds of hope into her fellow students.
Alright, that's gonna do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe and whatnot.
And I will see you guys next time.